Welcome to the Rocketbaum Computer Consulting Monthly Webinar Series. And I have the pleasure of introducing you to Greg Tisdale, our fearless Sage 100 practice leader. He's going to dive into some of the more interesting new features of Sage 100 2025, and I'm going to stop talking now so he can take it away.
Great. Thanks, Kelly. Appreciate the introduction. Good. I guess it's still now this afternoon for everybody. Good afternoon, except for on the West Coast. Thank you for attending our What's New in Sage 2025 webinar. As Kelly said, my name is Greg Tisdale. I am the Sage 100 practice manager here, and I'll be doing the presentation for today. So let's jump right into this. So in our webinar today, we're gonna cover a number of topics. Not necessarily all the actual changes that have been done in 2025. That would be a little too long. So what I've done is I picked out what I thought were some high points, some what they're offering, and those I'm going to touch on today. If there's anything that we miss, and I'll specifically production management, we are not going to touch on that in today's webinar. Um, but if anyone has any questions or if would like to look at the Sage 100 What's New document that Kelly had sent out in our newsletter recently or available from our website, you can see what the new features are in production management. If you have any questions, you can please reach out to me offline. I'll be happy to address them with you or just show you what has been added. I'll just quickly touch on it. They've added new costing options, the ability to copy templates, steps, specifically individual steps on templates, which currently now you can only copy a whole template. And also they've added the ability to put work instruction and attachments on steps, which in the current version, you can only add it to the entire work ticket. So a few changes, some more improvements. If anyone's interested, please let me know. Um, Other than that, we're going to talk about some of the other changes that were made that I think are going to be beneficial to everyone. So I'll go ahead and bring up my Sage 100 and we'll jump right into it. So I'm going to start with General Ledger. And the change that they've made in General Ledger is the ability to reverse your journal entries, which is something you could do now. But in the new version, you'll be able to reverse a journal entry back to the actual date that it occurred, as long as that period is not closed. If the period is closed that you're trying to reverse the journal entry to, it will use the current date as the posting date. So let me just jump in and let's look at that. I'm going to bring up something that has some transactions in it. So the first one I'm going to do is an older journal entry so that you can see what Sage will pop up as a dialog if it is trying to post to a closed period. So I'm going to hit my journal reversal icon over to the right. And you can say, okay, you cannot post to a prior period. The date of 6/11 will be used. So this is kind of what we're used to. This will be the typical default as you would see it today, that it would use the current date. So I'm going to say, okay. It's going to say the reversal is complete. And now I'm going to take one that's in a month that's still open. So let's pick this one here. We'll do the same thing. We're going to reverse. It's going to tell me there's no message related to date this time. Reversal is complete. Review the entry in general journal entry. So I'll say, okay. I'm going to accept out. I'm going to pop into general journal entry. And you can see there are the two reversals that we did. The first, which was originally done in a closed period, you can see picked up the 6/11 date today. And the one that we did that's in the current period or an open period will reverse the journal entry at the date that it actually was transacted. All right. So if anyone has any questions as we go through this, please just let Kelly know and we'll stop. I mean, we want to make this interactive and get you guys the right information. So please, if you need any elaboration, just let Kelly know and we'll stop and talk about it. All right. The next change is a accounts receivable change. However, it is accessed through common information. It is the ability now in Sage 100 to change your invoice, the number of characters for your invoice. Currently, today, you have 7 characters. Now we can go up to 20 characters if needed. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. So in common information, under common information options, I'll get that open. There has now been added the option to set the number of characters for your invoices. So what we're going to do for today, I'm just going to bump it up to 10. Now this will change all current invoice numbers out there in history and anything open to the new number of characters. The one thing it won't change is if you're using alpha characters or alphanumeric character for your invoices, it will not renumber those in history. Those will still remain the same size. Going forward, as you enter, you'll be able to use the extended amount of characters in the field, but the system will just not change that in any historical sense. And I'll give you an example of that once we do this. So I'm going to go ahead and accept this. All right, it's going to tell me, all right, we're going to renumber everything in the company that we're doing this in, VBC. And this is not something that we can undo. So once we do this, we cannot ever go backwards. We can add more characters, but we cannot reduce the number of characters going forward. So this is, once you do it, it's an all or nothing proposition. And I'm going to say yes. And it's just going to tell me what's going to happen. We're going to do accounts receivable, invoice numbers, sales orders, and job cost. And we can go up to the 20 characters in length that we just discussed. I'm going to say proceed. And you can see I get a log of all the changes that were made and where they were made. This log can be printed if needed. I'll just bring that up. So it just opens up in Notepad and you can print them if needed. This is saved too in the system if you never needed to go back. Let me close out of here. So I'm going to say okay. There were no errors, by the way, in that process. And let's go in accounts receivable and see what that looks like. So I'm going to bring up one of our customers. All right. And I'm going to go into invoices. And now you can see instead of 7 characters for our invoice length, we have added up the additional 3 and we're at 10 characters. So in essence, the system has gone out and padded the existing invoice numbers with the additional 3 zeros. Now to show you what happens if you were with alphanumeric invoice numbers, let me find Maverick here. You can see that doesn't get padded. Going forward, though, any new invoices, if you do alphanumeric, you'll be able to use the full extent of the 20 characters. The system is not going to update anything that's currently written with the additional added, in most cases, it would be the zeros. All right.
I do have a question, Greg.
Yes.
Going back to the first point, is the reversal just simplifying the process of manually creating reversals?
Yes. Yes, it really is just saving you having to go in directly into general journal entry and doing the reversal from scratch. It really is just creating it for you. And the new feature, uses or updates the date based on the period being open or closed.
Thank you.
Thank you. So one of the other changes in accounts receivable is in cash receipts entry. And this is really related to customers that are on credit hold. So let me open up get a deposit going here. We'll find my customer that I know is on hold. And I just want to bring that down and show you that there is a new dialog box here in the middle right top of the screen for customer on credit hold, so that you know as you're entering cash receipts if this customer, you may or may not have been be waiting for this cash receipt to come in or monies to come in to pay past due balances so that you can release something, but it's informational and just something new that they've added. I will say that almost all these additions that we're looking at today come from requests from clients. So there is a process at Sage for you to enter your, they call them, I guess, PERS, uh, which are really just product enhancement requests. So you are able to do that, and they do listen. It is like based on the number that they receive, they will triage it. So if there's things that you feel that, Sage should be doing, it is in your best interest to go out and actually put a PER in, because they do help.
I have another question.
Yes,
Can you show us the lines in the reversal and how they show in the accounts?
sure. So let's go back. Let's go back. We'll do the one that was more current. We'll pick this one. Oops. Nope, we'll pick this one. It's already in the journal entry. Well, let's go look at it there. I forgot we didn't post it. So here is the first reversal of, I think this was the one that was, yeah, this is the one. Perfect.
Thank you for that.
That, yes. I'll go back in. There's the one we just completed.
It looks good.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. So I'm going to quickly jump back into account maintenance under AR, because I just want to show you a couple of the other, or really one of the next changes that they made in terms of enhancements to the customer master. Oh, I'm in the wrong.
I do have
Sorry.
one more question, Greg. So sorry.
Yeah.
Is going through account maintenance the only way to initiate the reversal?
I mean, to use that automated, to use the icon, yes. Otherwise, it's going to be just a manual entry into general journal entry.
All right.
But that's kind of the quick, I don't know what to call it, the quick print of everything. That's just guess I just call it the quick reversal process from directly from the account. I mean, excuse me, yeah, from account maintenance, but it can be done directly in journal entry.
Good.
Up ABF. All right, so let's hop in here and jump over onto the statistics. Yeah, I'm going to call it stats page, statistics, if I could say that, and just let you know and show you that there are a couple new fields that have been added here, and I just highlighted the text labels as red so they just stand out a little bit. But last invoice date and last invoice amount are added to the screen now. Just more informational, but something that I know people have been asking for, and they finally included that. Let me close out of here. Let's jump into accounts payable. So in accounts payable, one of the larger changes that they made was in invoice payment selection. And on the selection columns. So when I open up the grids for selection, we're used to having the view where we could select by using our control or tab and pre-selecting what invoices we want to use. There is, however, another view that has been added, and you can toggle back and forth between these views. And this toggle switch is in the bottom left of the screen. So if I switch view, instead of doing the multiple selection, as you just saw on the previous screen, you can use the checkbox if you prefer. So really, this is more of a preference. So the old way is still there, and an option to do it by checkbox as opposed to using the, your control tab or your shift tab to multiple select invoices. And then it remembers. So if you prefer that to use the checkboxes, if that's the one you use when you go back in, that's what it will default to. And vice versa. If you prefer the old way, it will stay there for you. And each time you go in, you won't have to toggle back and forth between them. All right. And that's really for AP, that's pretty much the extent of the changes there. Inventory, there are a few changes here, specifically to the item master. So we jump onto item master and the additional tab. They've added a couple of new fields to be specific. So they've added the UPC EAN, so Universal Product Code, or the European article number. And there's a couple different variations that you can choose from. So UPC-A, which is I believe, a 12-character UPC number, UPC-E, which is an 8-character, your EAN at 8, which is an 8-character, and EAN 13, which is 13. And other, if you have some other information you'd rather use in this field. This field is mapped to your picking sheets. So this can print on your picking sheets, your sales orders. If it's not already mapped, it can be added. So any of your documentation now can pick up the UPC number, EAN number from this field. And it's already, for the most part, in most cases, it's mapped already to the work tables that Crystal prints from. All right. And I'll just show you that. Let me close out of here. I'm going to open up my sales order. All right, perfect. And I just added a barcode to my picking sheet form just so I could show you. So there's my barcode for my first item and my barcode for my second item. And like I said, that field is already on the picking sheet, so it doesn't take a lot of work to add it to the actual form. Okay. One of the other major changes is to physical count entry, and specifically printing, how you can print and printing on the worksheet. So what they've added is the ability on physical count worksheet or physical count freeze to be able to do it by product line. So we can sort by product line. And in addition to adding the product line option, we now have the ability, if necessary, to print the item extended descriptions as well. So if I change this, I'm not going to freeze, I'll just print the worksheet. And you can see now, instead of being sorted by item or sorted by bin, I'm being sorted by product line and then by item bin within that product line. You can see it's just going to go alphabetically. So this just will allow, in situations where in your warehouse, if you do group product by product line as opposed, to buy like products, excuse me, you can print your worksheets in that manner so that when the team is out there counting, just makes it a little easier for them. And the other change here was to label printing. And it's probably not a big change, but for people who do print labels, I feel like it was an improvement. So what they've done is finally given us the option to keep the print selection open after we either print it or preview it so that we can make another selection. I know typically when we're printing inventory labels, we may be doing one at a time, a couple at a time, and we just, we want to continuously print them. So this will allow us to print the labels, close out, and then still be in to make another selection. So, I mean, not a huge change, but if you do print labels, it does, I think you'll appreciate this one modification. All right, let's jump into sales order changes. And finally, for those of us that have been adding telephone numbers to sales orders and invoice for years as a UDF field or as adding a map field from the customer master, Sage has finally added telephone number and extension to sales orders, invoices, and they'll pre-populate if it's filled out in the customer master. But this, again, not sure why we've had fax number for the last 10 years and not telephone, but we're finally here. And then if you were to invoice that, you'll see that it carries over. And that's also now part of the form so that if you needed to print on packing lists, sales order forms, the invoice form, push to Starship, it's now available. So I'm going to cancel that. All right. The other major change, in my opinion, that they've made is now the ability to have audit tracking in sales order entry. They've also done it in purchase order, and I'll show you that when we get to that point. But in sales order options on the history tab, we open that up. You can see now we have sales order audit. We have our option to track it. It's really all or nothing. And then there's the option to track in detail. My recommendation is to always track in detail because you can always filter reports if they get too long. Um, but if you do only summary, you won't, obviously you can't drill into the detail if you've only done summary. So my recommendation is just track it in detail. If your reports get too long, we can always filter reports. All that's pretty much built in. And I'll show you what that looks like. There's two ways you can see that. So if we go to sales order entry, I'll grab that last order we were on. Now in the upper right, next to where the user code appears, there's an audit viewer gear icon. And if you click on that, you can see in summary, this is the summary view of what's been done to this particular sales order. However, if you use the drill down icon to the right, you can actually see all the detail. Now, this is when the order was created. So you see every field was added. So that's all the information that was created by that sales order. So that obviously is a lot. But then we came in and me, made a change. And if I drill into the change, you'll see it just tells what happened for that particular change. So here in this case, I changed the ship via from UPS red to UPS blue. So now for those questions where, we need to know who changed this field, what happened here, you're going to have a record visibility in the sales order, if it still exists, or in a report. So now under sales order, under the reports, there's the sales order audit report. And there's a number of options that we can choose here, how we want to run it, what we want to see. The demo data doesn't have a ton of data, so we'll just do everything. And basically, this is everything that's happened to sales orders. 5 pages in detail. So there really should be no reason that you can't find what was changed by whom and when at any given point. And again, that just needs to be turned on in SO options. That will be off by default. So if you do go into 2025, we just need to turn that on for you. Now, purchase order.
I have a couple questions, Greg.
Sure.
Or one, actually. Is there the same tracking on the field level for vendor?
Yes. In vendor maintenance, vendor tracking already exists. Again, it needs to be turned on in accounts payable options. So there is an option on the history tab in accounts payable. And this is an existing I forget how far back in Sage this goes, but I know at least for the last 5 or more years that's been available. Now that you won't have the gear lookup there, that hasn't been added, but you have the audit report. Is that helpful?
Looks like it.
Perfect. And again, let's hop over to the history tab. And now, again, identical to the sales order, you have purchase order audit. Again, the two options, none or all. So we'll turn on all. And again, I would recommend that you track your additions in detail because at some point you're going to want to know the drill down information. So you want to get as much as possible. So that's going to look very similar. So we open up our purchase order entry. I have my same gear icon, same place. So similar functionality. I can see the summary when I first open it, and then I can drill down into each one of the actions that I want to, see more detail on. So it's very granular. And then they also have added the purchase order audit report. So basically the same functionality as they added in sales order. So purchase order got something at the same time sales order did, which is not always usual with when Sage rolls stuff out. So purchase order audit. All right. So, another addition that they did with purchase order that now catches them up to sales order is now if we open up options, a new feature that they added in addition to the audit is the ability to require cancellation codes for purchase orders that are deleted. So if we turn this on, then we open up access to cancel and reason code maintenance under setup in purchase order. And you can come in and define. So there's some predefined Sage codes, and you can go ahead and add, you know, your own. So you can add your own user-defined codes. And if you don't want to use the ones that Sage has, you can just make them inactive and just use your own. So now, if you go into purchase order entry, and let's find one that we can cancel here. If I come in and I want to delete this, it's going to ask me, do I want to do this? I'm going to say yes. And then it's going to require that I put in a cancellation code. So I can't get out of this without putting something in. So I'm going to pick my, okay. And now I can go, in the future at some point if I needed to report on, why purchase orders had been canceled. So I was doing something for vendor performance and we've closed a ton of or canceled a ton of POs for a particular vendor. They haven't been sufficiently able to supply our quantity demands or to some effect. You could then run reports on that and then use that for your vendor performance reporting, especially if you're ISO certified. I know that's one of the things that they require. Now, the next thing in purchase order is probably the largest addition to Sage. So this is probably the biggest enhancement that they made. And it's the ability in purchase order now to do RFQs. So a request for quotation, which is something, we've been asking for, well, if you ask Joe, he's been asking for 20 years. So we finally got there. And what they've done is in purchase order entry is giving you the option to select a quote, very similar to what you do when you do a sales order quote. So we can come in, we take our next order number. Under order type, you see we have our usual options. And now at the bottom, you see they've added quote. So I'm going to choose my quote. And I'm going to go, my ship expire date. I do want to stop here because I want to show you something that I want in options, just because this has an effect on. So in the entry tab under purchase order options, they've added a section for quotes. So there's a couple of features that you can set up so that your quotes behave and how you'd like them. One is being use the default order date when generating purchase order. And the default order date is basically today's date. It's actually coming from the defaults field. And I'll show you that when we go back into the order. But this is just saying use today's date when I'm generating a purchase order from this quote. So when I make it active and basically, release it, it will use the order date of today and use the order date from today. Or if I have this checkbox cleared, it's going to use the date of the original RFQ. So when the quote was created. So that's really what that means. So I'm going to want it to default to the day that I'm actually generating it. I do have a default number of days that I can set so that the quote will expire and it automatically populates the date. And I can choose what I want to use for cost. Now let me, I'm going to apologize. I'm going to cancel this because I want to show you those options. Now I have it set to zero cost because my expectation is I want the vendor to fill in the cost and I don't want to give them any, information other than the zero so that they fill it in and not use what I've used or but that doesn't have to be the case. You can pick which cost to use if you would like to send that to the vendor. So you can use last cost, average cost, standard cost, zero unit cost, have it prompt. The cost hierarchy is going to be based on your LIFO, FIFO, and your first in, first out. So the whatever the last cost or the first cost. Um, Again, I feel like zero cost makes the most sense, but you're not limited to that. So back to purchase order. Take my next number. And again, I'll change this to quote. I'm going to pick my vendor. Now, this is the first vendor that I pick is the vendor that's going to pre-populate all the information on the purchase order header. However, I'm not limited to the one vendor. I'm able to create this quote to go out to multiple vendors. And I do that by hitting the plus icon just to right of the vendor lookup. And it opens up another box that says, hey, tell me all the other vendors you'd like this quote to go to. So I'm going to pick a couple others here. Right. And I'm going to say okay. And now I'm going to grab the lines. Let me pick an item. Two of these. And you can see because I have the zero cost set, it doesn't bring a cost in. And it says here, quote item, zero unit cost. So, but it does tell me in the lower left dialog what my actual last cost, average cost, and standard costs are. So I do have visibility in my costs here. All right, I'll flip over to totals. We're not really adding anything here. And then I'm going to hit accept. Right. Now there's a couple ways I can print this. So I can quick print it, or I can print it as a range. Now, the printer icon that we would normally use for our range of purchase order printing doesn't print quotes. But if you notice, just to the right of that icon, there's a drop-down arrow. If I click that, you'll see I have an option to do purchase order printing or quote printing. So if I pull up quote printing, and I preview this, you see I get all three vendors that we're requesting the quote from. You can see that on the form, there is not an area for the vendor to fill in. Now, this quote, request for quote, can also be emailed using your standard email functionality that you have in Paperless Office. I don't have that turned on in this demo company, but if you set it up, it will be there and available for you. And this allows me to print a range of POs, or we can do a quick print. And basically, the quick print knows whether it's a quote or not. So you don't have to choose with the quick print. You can just simply quick print this. And I get all three RFQs to go out. Now I'm going to go back to the first one because I just wanted to show you. If you notice, the item code here is not the same item code as the others. And that is because for this vendor, Airway, we have a vendor alias set up. So out of the box, the, the RFQ will print vendor aliases if they are created in your system. So um, it just makes it easy, comes out automatically. Obviously, sometimes you want to see both, so you could certainly turn on your item code to print here as well, and that's pretty easy to do. And as most of you know, every form, every report in Sage 100 can be modified using Crystal reports. All right, now, so quotes come back, and you decide on, well, I don't want to use Airway this time. Maybe their lead time's too long, maybe, whatever happens to be. I want to use one of the other vendors. Now, I'll do All Climate. So one of the things I do have to do is change the vendor number in the quote to the vendor that I'm actually going to be releasing the PO for, change that. And then once that is done, I can check the box that my quote is ready to generate. I'll go in and fill in the unit cost that the vendor gave me. Okay. And then I can generate the order. So this is a one-off. I can choose to include the comment lines or the memos. It's going to tell me what the next purchase order number is. Say OK. And now I'm going to come in and you can see 143, I mean 143, excuse me, is now a standard purchase order. There's our item, there's our quantity. Oh, and I didn't accept the unit cost because I didn't tab off that field. And again, too, once the quote is turned into an order, the order is fully editable. So you can see I can still change it. I can add to it if I want to add other items to this.
Quick question, Greg. Is there any tracking of responses?
Not internally. As I was going through this and think, and that was something that I had thought about is the way I thought that we could handle this is to attach the the vendor's responses as memos. So if the vendor returns a physical PDF copy, something that we can actually save, then we can attach it to the purchase order as an attachment. Let me go to that last one. So that we'd have a copy of all three of, and I do want to see that the quote does stay out there, but it goes into completed status so that you don't actually lose the quote like you do in sales order, where in a sales order you turn a quote into an order. That same quote becomes the sales order. In this case, we keep the original quote. We have it show as completed, which means when you do your normal utilities of purging, it will purge out based on whatever the date range you have um, in your setup to keep, how long to keep open purchase orders. So I'm going to say yes, but my thought was because it is to use the memo codes and attachments, so I could. It, this is just my thought, and then I could attach the return PDF from All Climate, the one from Anders, the one from all the vendors. So I'd have physical copies there that I could go into at any time because these will carry over into history. But I think that's, as far as, I've been able to get with this, that seems to be the workaround for that, if that makes sense.
Think we're following.
Okay. Now there is one other way to generate your standard orders from your purchase order quotes, your RFQs. And let me grab, I think this one's still open. Yep. Da-da-da. All right, so here's one. So if I have more than one quote that I'm working that I want to generate into an order, I can do that. There's an auto generate feature, so I could just come in and check the box of the quotes I'm turning into orders and then use the utility to just generate multiples. So this utility, let's go ahead and I want to say, I'll just do and this should just generate the one that we were, or unless sorry, if I have another one checked. Yeah, just one. So just a couple of ways you can do it. You can do it as a one-off using the generate on the actual physical quote, or use the auto generate if you want to do multiples. Might just save a little time. And this, again, it's just going to tell me what it's creating. And that's you know probably the biggest feature that Sage has added into this release. So it's and I do it is something that we have been waiting for a long time. So hopefully there's some benefit to you guys in terms of additional functionality. One of the other features, though, they did add to purchase order I want to touch on before we leave PO is in return of goods. Excuse me, my order number here. So in return of goods, when I'm in the current stage, if I do a return of goods, reference a PO, Sage is going to reopen the purchase order, back order the quantities that I'm returning onto that purchase order and put it in back order status. So basically, it puts it back out there, and the assumption is I'm going to receive it in at some point. So I'm returning it for repair. But we all know that that's not the case. A lot of times we return product because it's defective, we didn't want it, it's the wrong thing, whatever happens to be. And we don't want to reopen a PO. We just want to return to the vendor for credit. So what Sage added here, and if is over here on the right, there's a backorder PO option, which is defaulted, but I can turn it off and I can set this so that it doesn't default. But if I turn this off, then I am going to return the goods. So I'm going to take the product out of inventory for whatever the quantity is I'm returning and not create an open PO or repopulate the PO with a backorder quantity. So if I do this and got to distribute that. So I'm going to return these two. And update this. All right, so it's just going to tell me I'm taking two out of stock. I've returned to my cost, my lot number. There was no taxes on this. And now I should see the dollars come out of inventory. So I have my credit to inventory, and I debited purchases clearing because I had not yet received this invoice, this particular purchase order. So now, if everything magically works here, we're going to go in and look at that PO 10028. And you can see that it didn't open it back up. It's still in receive status and doesn't go back into back order status. So it just gives you some flexibility there. So if you do have items that you are returning that you are actually expecting them to replace, then you can reopen the PO so you can re-receive it in. Or if you're returning product and you're expecting credit, you can go ahead and uncheck that box and have it just return the goods and not reopen the PO. Let's see. Let me move on to bank rec. So in bank reconciliation, basically they just made some changes in the column sorting options. So let me go to Bank D. And really what they've done is by user, you now have the ability to go in and choose how you want your columns to sort. So there's a new icon over on the right of the panel. Click on the icon, pick your column, say maybe I want to do it by date. And then I could do date ascending as opposed to check number, or, and then I can do have a secondary sort as well. But the point is, this is by user. So if I want to see it one way, I'm not affecting anyone else. And then once I set that, Sage is going to remember, and the next time it come in, it'll be sorted the way I want to see it. So that's available in the check deposit and adjustment entry, as well as in the, I'm sorry, reconcile bank as well. Let me click on the right thing here. So I'll do amount. So not a huge change, but just to give you a little more flexibility and allow you to see things a little more the way you want to see them. Let's see. We'll hop in. I think like Visual Integrator had one change. Now this will not going to affect a ton of people, but if you do use Visual Integrator and if you're familiar with temp fields, which are something that we use from time to time, if you're familiar with this, you know that Sage just assigns temp 001, temp 002. And if you haven't looked at a job for an extended period, that doesn't necessarily mean anything to anyone. And you basically have to relearn the job to figure out what you did there. Now, when you create a temp field, so I'm going to go ahead and add temp field. I can name it. Say reset. I want this to be a reset, which is usually what, in my experience, I've used most temps fields for. And now you can see at least it gives it a name. So not a huge change, but if you use VI a lot, it's very helpful. And I know some of you have a pretty extensive jobs, and some of these in jobs do have it temp fields set up. And let me just mention Paperless Office. So in Paperless Office, a couple things have been added. Basically, in PO, we now have the ability to do quote. I did all documents, but quote is now an option for your PO form maintenance so that, if it is set up in Paperless Office, you can electronically email your quote, and then Sage will save the PDF copy in the vendor under the vendor documents or vendor PDFs. So that was added. And also the ability in journal and registers. See, I think I'd set it up to show you bank rec. If you do positive pay exports, the positive pay export log is now able to be saved into Paperless Office as well. So just a couple little tweaks there that were added. And as I mentioned in the beginning, production management had a couple of changes. And if anybody would like a little more information on that, I'm happy to get in touch with them. So please just send me a request offline, and we'll get something on the calendar. And the last change I'll mention, I'm not going to show, is we have a new version of Crystal. It and I only bring that up because sometimes when we're doing um, two versions of Crystal, we have to do a little tweaking. So I just want everyone to be aware as you move through the process that Crystal has changed.
All right, if anybody has any last minute questions, go ahead and get them entered in there. Otherwise, there will be a survey afterwards. One of the questions is if you want us to reach back out to you for any other questions you might have, feel free to do that. Or you can get in touch with your favorite consultant on the VBCC team. I don't
Ta-ta-da.
see any last minute questions. Here's Greg's information, should you want to reach out to him directly.
Absolutely. Yes, and please feel free to do that. And when I told Kelly and I first got on, I told her it would only take me, it's about 40 minutes when I did my walkthrough. So I guess in person, I'm a little more long-winded than I am when I do it myself. So
All right. Well, I don't see any more questions coming in. So I'd like to just quickly thank Greg for all his time getting this prepared and remind everybody that on our website, we do have the full release of all of the new features. And we do have that kind of in a document as well, should you want us to send it. So get in touch with Greg or myself and we can make sure you get that. And of course, thank you for your time. We know your time is valuable, so we really appreciate you spending a little bit of it with us. Thank you all again and have a great rest of your day.